it's actually perfect that you answered tonight, because the question I had for the last 2 weeks is relating to the title of your talk tonight.
Yeah.
And if I can't even see it now because I've turned off YouTube, but it's something about death, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So in the last year, there's been a lot of death and sickness in my life, and like friends, family members, and my cat is on his way out. He's actually here with me, and it's been quite a trip, a roller coaster of grief and uncertainty and shock and all kinds of stuff. And like, I know one of the comforts people give themselves or have with death is to believe that there's an afterlife and believe that the soul continues in some form. And I really struggled with that. I want to believe it because I can see how comforting it would be to imagine this singular soul somehow still in the ether, or somehow still like able to communicate with me and I with them. But my sense of it is that when a person dies, that and apologies if you've already kind of talked about this in I came on the talk a bit late tonight, so
it's okay. No, we didn't talk about this.
Okay, great. So yeah, my sense is that when a person dies, that their energy kind of dissipates back into the universe, like that physics law of energy cannot be created or destroyed, but only change shape. And my sense is that that's what happens, that energy just becomes kind of, which I suppose from a non-dual point of view never was disconnected or never was singular, was always one, that the material body drops away or whatever, decomposes, but the energy that it kind of enlivens the body, or whatever, lived in the body, or whatever way you want to say it, is oneness. What was always oneness and continues to be always oneness. But I struggle with the idea of this singular soul with, like, like with past lives, for example, or and I long for it because I long to connect with those people who've left and who are leaving, and even my cat, who sits on my lap when I meditate every morning, and it's such a deep connection I have with him in that sense, like such a spiritual, beautiful connection, pure connection. So yeah, I don't know how to form the question, but it's just it's just wondering.
And I'll just take it as like a diving board and jump, like just take bits of it and then jump.
Sure.
And see what happens. So it's so fascinating, this idea of a singular entity. Like, so it's like what we're living in is like really fascinating, because, right, so if I look back, this is just an example, and I'm sorry to take it back to myself, but it's easier to talk about myself because I can remember myself. So if I take it back to like the last 10 years of speaking, or being on YouTube. So if I do that and I look at myself, I can see that there has been an evolution in the way that I see things, in the way that I speak, and in my body. Like my body, if you look at the pictures of me over the years, my body has physically changed. It's aged, but also like my face has kind of like become more womanly. Like I feel like my face changed from being more childlike to more womanly. My voice has changed. You could say like it's like the instruments, like say like YouTube and the fact that we use widescreen now most of the time. But there's also physical changes that I can see in myself. I hear differences in my voice, and I can see that my ideas have evolved. And I can see that my character has evolved and changed. And that's something that we don't often see because we're not recording ourselves continuously to see that. Whereas I've been captured for the last 10 years, and maybe now the newer generation will always be captured so they can see their evolution. And you most probably, it's hard for your mind to see it because you feel like you've been a steady person maybe since you can remember, since you were like 5. But actually, if you had your whole life recorded, you'd see you've got basic tendencies that are arising, but you're actually evolving, like not just intellectually, but you're also evolving. Your conditioning is evolving, your way of seeing the world is evolving, your speaking is evolving, your intellect is evolving, your memory is evolving, and your physicality is evolving as well. So like I suppose you could also see that as well. Like if you think about the ideas in which you have now compared to the ideas 20 or 30 years ago. I don't know if you were alive 30 years ago, like 20 years ago. Yeah. So you can see that there's been an evolution of you. So what is it then that is fundamentally you? If you're always changing, so if you were alive for 500 years or 1,000 years, what would be essentially you if you're something that's growing and changing? And if you recorded that growth and change? And the same with your cat, and the same with like family members that have died, which I would like to say, I'm sorry, like on a human level, it's also sad to lose people, and like sorry to hear that. But like if you look at it, like who is it that you are, and who is it that they are? So to me, the way in which I see life, but you've got to come to your own conclusion, your own feeling about it, is that like there are habits and conditions in this life, like in the play of things, that are constantly evolving, and sometimes they take on things for longer periods of time. So like right now, like to my right, I'm looking at a wooden chair, and originally, no, there is no originally of where that wooden chair came from. I can't find an original moment, but I can say at one time the tree, that chair was a tree. At one time that chair was water. At one time that chair was soil. At one time that chair was air. At one time that chair was rock. Like, so that chair that I'm looking at now has been in all different forms, but I just can't really detect that with my eyes and my current senses. And that's the same for you, and that's the same for me. Like this body and this information that's arising from this body has been all different types of things. It's been the wind, it's been the sand, it's been the dust, it's been the soil, it's been the other animals, it's been leaves, it's been a tree, it's been water. Like I think we're like 94 or 90 something % made of water. And also my ideas, yeah, it's really poetic. My ideas have also been the idea of enslaving women. My ideas have also been that of capturing and enslaving animals. My ideas have also been that of living off the land and like roaming the land. Like I'm talking like before we started to domesticate animals. So, and my ideas have also been Einstein, and they've also been the person that worked in the fields on wheat. My ideas have also been Christianity, Islam, Sufism, which is Islam, but it's also been paganism. It's also been Greek mythology. And that's the same for you, and that's also the same for your loved ones. Like we are built on everything that came before. In fact, there never is a solid you or me. There is this evolution of things. And when you really know that and see that, you see your cat and you see your family members who've died are actually here and present in everything that is expressed. It's just that that particular combination of things that you see them as is no longer present. So your brain, because of the way that we function as humans, and we need solid objects in order to relate with, to have conversation and to narrate our environment and our surroundings, you see them as something solid, which is important for us to be able to see things as solid in order to be able to keep to keep a continuous relationship. But it's not who they ever were. When you spoke to your family member that's died, so say if it was your dad, so when you spoke to your dad actually never heard you as the form in which you imagined him to be. So he maybe was an intelligent man, a wise man, an angry man, a slim man, a tall man, like all these different labels that you saw him as, that was never actually conscious or alive. That was a formation appearing, like the birds in the sky, like the clouds, like the tree. It was a formation that appeared, but it wasn't actually conscious. So that person that you saw him as the tall man, the right man, the good man, wasn't ever actually conscious or alive, but we imagined that person to be conscious and alive. There was a consciousness that was perceiving all those dynamics and then maybe identifying with those dynamics. And that consciousness, which was your dad, is actually still here and all around you, perceiving. So every time you want to know your dad, you just look to presence, to that consciousness which is already here and innately in all objects. And then we can describe your dad as a particular accumulation of things, like I can call this chair a chair and you can call him dad and you can call him a name. And that's so beautiful. That's part of being human, but that wasn't actually ever a reality. That was something that we invented in words and we invented in our culture in order to survive better. That was never who he was. Before we learnt to speak as humans, you would have never seen your dad as an idea. You wouldn't have known that. You wouldn't have known he was a good man or a bad man or a right man or a tall man or a leader, because you wouldn't know those words. You'd have seen him as what is, which is mystery, which is undefinable, which is watching, which is conscious.
And he would have seen, well, he wouldn't have seen me that way because he was already a person, but like it's the same in him in a way.
Yeah.
Like as in I'm the same, like you're describing my father and I'm thinking that's how he also experiences me in that way.
As
he's
idea.
He's still alive, but he has dementia now.
Oh yeah.
He's close to the end too, but it looks good. Yeah, it's this, like my mind's like kind of blown by what you're saying in a way.
Yeah.
And I do get a sense, like as I mentioned, I meditate and that helps me.
Yeah.
It helps me connect with the source of my being, or whatever way you want to say, and then a sense of a collective, like the source, you could say, I suppose, of everything. And then in that space, I don't, the grief doesn't touch me in a way. It's kind of, it feels like outside of that or something.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I know it's inside that, but it feels, it just doesn't feel like it's there, because I just feel wholeness, and I get a sense of, like my young nephew died, and I get a sense of his kind of, his intactness in that space, like that he's still totally, I don't want to say present, but still with us, I guess.
Yeah.
For example. So,
that's it. That's really beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. But in this kind of story of the person, when I'm in that sort of realm, and of time and physicality, there's no way around not feeling the grief of the loss.
Yeah, physiologically, it's very important, enlightened or non-enlightened, that your body goes through grief. So say if we took it to like Khaleesi, who I don't think has the ability to project onto me an idea. Like to me, my dog is enlightened. Like she doesn't have the ability to project onto me like an idea of Lisa. But if I were to die and to leave her, she would look for me, and she will go through a physiological loss of pining for me. And it's through time and through different experiences which will help her to heal from that and to bond with somebody else, or to bond with another dog, another person. But there has to be that physiological release. Like our brain has to adjust to me, who I've been with her for nearly 9 years now, has to deal with that object, that person, that bond, that intimacy no longer being there. And that's a physiological thing. And that's not like that's something like, so your body has to go through the process of grieving that loss, and it's more intense for the people that you're around a lot more and had a longer span of relationship with.
Yeah, and I don't want to cheat myself out of that, because like I did try to do a kind of spiritual bypass. I went to India and did like a kind of retreat, and it was beautiful, and it was the right thing to do at that time. But then I came back and I realized I was kind of in this bliss state in a way, and I kind of realized that I still needed to face the grief and feel and cry, and like that there was part of me kind of maybe running away from that in a way. But I mean, it's all okay in the end of the day, I suppose. But it's just it was good for me to recognize that, like I hadn't really known about this phenomenon called spiritual bypass until I started doing it, and then kind of came up short, like realized I wasn't actually enlightened or as whatever enlightened as I thought I was, because I had, you know, some beautiful experiences over there, and
for sure,
but it didn't last, you know, or like the bliss states don't last.
No, they don't. They come and go. And you can have these awakenings and these energetic shifts and be spiritually bypassing. Like it's two different worlds in a way. It's like like you have these awakenings to who you truly are, and that's really beautiful, and that penetrates something very deep. But it doesn't, that won't heal your body going through a physiological reaction to somebody leaving your life. So on the human level, I don't know so much about grief, but I think like the way it's meant to go is that you're meant to like grieve and then rebuild, and grieve and rebuild, and alternate for a period of that, grieving the loss of something and then rebuilding. So it's like not spending all your time in rebuilding and not spending all your time in grieving. It's like this oscillation. It's almost like the oscillation that you have with trauma. You know, when you're coming to grips with the trauma in your body, you have to like oscillate between the pain of that trauma, but then coming out of it and rebalancing that trauma. You know, like not getting stuck in it or not avoiding it completely. Like it's this and that maybe is like I don't want to make any summaries, but how we have to deal with a lot of things. It's like letting it in bit by bit. So you're letting it in, and then you're transforming into something else. Because it's something in the body. It's something, you know, if your family is all in, like if you're an animal and your whole tribe or your whole pack is annihilated, then that dog has to then Khaleesi just barked at me and gave me a fright. Like that. It was so perfect timing. That the dog has to it has to rebuild its survival technique, and it also has to deal with all those attachments being lost, that intimacy being lost, and that safety and that security being lost. So it's like these two, otherwise it will die. Like if it doesn't like rebuild a new way to survive, but also deal with that pining for those others. If it doesn't integrate into its life, then I'd most probably die.
I feel like it's been a kind of well, obviously, like this last year with lockdowns and everything, there's been a lot more time to think and feel and be with ourselves, even when we don't want to, or have a desire to kind of run away from stuff like grief. But I get a real sense of that oscillation you're talking about um, in just this time that I've been going through, and it's exactly like you say. It's like, you know, I still have to get up and have breakfast in the morning, or you know, exercise and do my work and all those things, but at the same time give space and respect the emotional kind of upheaval that's going on, and try and keep the two in balance, and not full. Like, there's been moments where I feel like, oh, I'm getting, you know, kind of self-indulgent. Maybe at times I am, and then I kind of have to pull myself out, and you know, and it's actually lovely sometimes to be pulled into the like real world of objects, and doing the laundry, or just simple tasks. I find really kind of grounding. But I guess, you know, everybody has a different way of viewing life and death, and the story, like the thing I sometimes, you know, because I want to be there for my family and kind of help them with their grief, and like talk about my nephew, for example, in a way that is comforting. But I don't have that sense of, like what I was saying about the individual soul. But I think the way you've described it earlier, and the stuff I was saying about when I meditate is all comforting. And maybe I don't need to believe in this individual soul as such to kind of process.
And also, you don't need to like not believe in it either. Like, so when people talk to me about ghosts, or like somebody dying and like their energy still being around, like, I'm really not opposed to that. I know that sounds really crazy after everything I've just said. Like, I kind of, like, so when I've experienced people dying, or friends of mine have experienced people dying, I can get into what they say. Like, they can kind of feel that energy still around or not around, and like, and I'm really not opposed to that, even though I completely don't believe in independent souls. So it's also life is so mysterious. Like, and it's just really what you feel in the moment, and what really resonates to be true with you or not.
Because ultimately, like, what we tell ourselves are stories, and they have their place, but the ultimate truth is probably beyond words or stories. And if I have time to ask, just in relation to, say, Hinduism that talks about past lives, what would a kind of non-dual perspective be on past life? Yeah.
So I don't know what the non-dual perspective, like consensus perspective on it would be, because non-dualism has like changed so much. The fundamental truth of it is the same, but like the expression of it has changed so much in the last 50 years since it's come over to the West. But my perspective on past lives is that like in the human world, there is always going to be past lives, because we're not separate from the objects which came before. But it's just not somebody's. It's just not a personal past life. That's the hard thing. So when I was in Buddhism, like the Buddhist organization, they taught me that there is rebirth. So there is the rebirth of energies and dynamics, but it doesn't belong to a particular person. There's not like a particular person that has these new lives or these different lives. But that's so confusing to imagine. But to me, that really resonates with me, and that really makes sense. So there is rebirth, but it's not anybody's rebirth.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I get it in a way, and then I don't. But I suppose that's just the mind. It wants to get things that it can't sometimes.
Yeah, totally.
Like, there's definitely a mystery to all this, and we can't really understand. But I do, like, sometimes when you've talked about some of this kind of stuff, you've talked about and apologies for paraphrasing because I'm not going to get it right, but sort of this sense of family line, say, having a past life. So say like my great grandmother, like she kind of lives in me, even though I never knew her. So her, in a way, she is my past life.
Yeah,
If that
totally.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So because and that's more tangible to mine because obviously it's just, there's a physical connection.
Yeah.
But
and even science, like Western science, like talks about this in a way. I mean, like it talks about genetics, but just like a particular experiment that always comes to mind is that they traumatized this female rat. Then they impregnated her. They traumatized her, say, with a pencil. So every time the rat saw a pencil, it like freaked out. And then they got her pregnant, and then she gave birth. And as soon as the babies saw the pencil, they were all terrified without being traumatized by it in this life.
Wow.
So it is like we are carrying not only the genetic makeup of all our ancestors, we are actually carrying their emotional responses as well, their traumas. Like all of that is carried in our DNA, which is really logical that it would be carried, our trauma, because if our parents were traumatized by something, then it's more than likely that we need to be precautious of that trauma in this life. And when you really begin to make it like work out like what that sense of I is, you'll notice that it's all habits and conditions. So habits which are genetic, and conditions which are in this life. So like we get new conditions, we are formed. So our schooling, our parenting, our friends will also aid us to change and evolve in some ways. But then we also have the genetics and the information from our ancestors. And if we, like what's so beautiful about that, like if we look back at like the creation of humans, like eventually we can like source it back to the two original humans. So we all came from like the same like information. Like it'd be really amazing if like we all tested our like DNA to see like how much we're related. Like so I wouldn't test mine because I don't trust the companies that do it. But I tested Khaleesi's because I knew that she wasn't a domesticated dog, and I wanted to find out her percentage of not being a domesticated dog genetically. And so on this like app, I'm still I pay, it was quite expensive and I pay for it. And on the app you can see like all her relations. So she doesn't actually have that many relations, but you can see like a dog and how far it's related to somebody, and like all its different characteristics, its behaviors, the color that it will be. Like it's really amazing like what they can predict from just a swab of their spit. I think that was all I had to do to give them. But she doesn't have very many relations because she's not a domesticated dog, so not many people that own dogs like her, like own dogs like her, firstly, like most of them are running around free in Asia. And then if they do own one, it's unlikely they'll pay 200 or 250 euros to get the DNA tested. Like that would be quite expensive in Thailand to do that. So she doesn't have many ancestors or relatives on there currently. But if I had like a Labrador or a Doberman or something, a popular dog breed, then you'd be able to like match it up with all these like relations, and they do it in percentage, like how much percentage related to this dog, like all over the world. You could like map it. It would be so amazing. And they're doing that with humans now, but just you don't know who the companies are. It
does sound a little bit scary. Like what are they doing with the info and what and what I don't know why. Well, I suppose it is fascinating to think that we are ultimately all connected, and we are like even on a physical. So it's not not just the idea of oneness or the kind of invisibility of oneness, but the physical, tangible realm of it, which of course my mind way prefers because it's in control. And that's the thing with death. There's like it's just this out of control mess.
Totally.
Which is beautiful too, of course, but not what the mind likes.
Beyond our grasp and our comprehension. Nice. Oh, well, thanks for calling in, Sarah. I really enjoyed speaking with you. And sorry to hear about all your losses.
Oh,
thank you. Painful to go through.
Yeah, well, it's been a big growing period as well. So it's got its good side too, I guess, in that way.
Yeah. Nice.
But yes, thank you so much for that. I really
Yeah. Lovely
appreciate
to speak with you.
that.
Yeah. I send you
Likewise.
lots of love.
Thank you. Likewise. Take care.
Bye.
See you. Bye. Bye.
Nice.